everybody, this is Mike from the One Stop Co-op Shop.
And today I'm going to be looking at Empires of the North, the sort of spin-off of Imperial Settlers. I'll start, as always, with setups and how to play the game, but if you want to skip that straight to the playthrough, just use the timestamps.
And I did want to note that I'm covering this game now after Wingspan because I asked our Patreon patrons and they voted for it, so thanks for your feedback, everybody. They also voted for which clan I'd play, so congratulations. We've got our drunken Vikings here. It should be fun. And just a quick reminder on the same topic, if you like what you see here, consider joining us for conversations on our Slack or Discord, listen to our podcast every Sunday, and consider supporting us on Patreon for early access to our videos, polls, the chance to play with us on Tabletop Simulator, lots of fun stuff. But let's get right into the details of setup. So first you are going to need your two main boards, your scoreboard and your island board. For your island board, you're going to shuffle your nearby island deck with a little Loch Ness monster here and put it there. And your distant island deck and put it there. And you'll finish by flipping up two face-up cards for each of the decks. Next, you're going to pick your clan. I already did that. You'll get generally 2 unique ships for them, although some clans have 3. And just look at this. They're like basically breaking their ship as they drink. Hilarious. You also want to find the unique scoring token for your clan and 2 action tokens in the color of your choice. Finally, you'll need an alternate scoring token from any other clan to mark the round you're playing in. Going over to the scoring board, we're going to mark the round with 1 with the other clan's token and put our own token on 0. You take your clan cards, shuffle all of the big deck with the different colored back, but take your 3 starting cards and put them down to begin your empire. And you're going to start with all of the resources indicated on these starting cards. So here I get 1 fish for my bay, 2 sheep for my grassland, 2 wood for my forest, and all of those go into my starting supply. Additionally, you'll take 5 pink worker meeples. You'll see some of them are samurai. They're from the Japanese expansion. And they'll go into your supply as well. And put the spent workers tile near your worker supply just so you can move them there as needed. Next, you take the 5 action tiles and shuffle them and arrange them in an interlocking shape like so. And make sure none of them are on their sort of orange, goldish, solo variant only side. Make sure you have all the rest of the resources you'll need nearby. The game comes with a nice little tray. And also make sure you have the 5 numbered tokens. These are used in the solo mode for resolving random events. You can put them in an opaque cup or something if you like. I just shuffle them and draw them from my hand. Finally, you want to pick your solo scenario. There are 4 in the core game. And each of them has some changes in setup, rules changes, things that you can gain extra points for, an action you can execute, and also some random events, and also a victory point threshold you need to beat to technically win. But to show you something kind of cool, Portal Games, in a classy move, published the extra solo scenarios. There are 3 in total that I think would have cost $5 before. So these are on their website. I'll post the link in the video info. And hey, I'm a Game of Thrones fan, so let's do Frost Giants at the Wall. In this case, we've got some setup additions. We take 2 stone and 1 worker from the supply, not from our resources, and put it on this The Wall space here. Finally, to finish setup, you draw the top 5 cards of your regular clan deck, and you choose 3 of them to keep and 2 to discard next to your deck.
But I'll save those decisions for the playthrough, so let's get right to how to play the game.
In solo play, the game ends after 4 rounds, which is marked with another clan's token, as I already said. At the end of those 4 rounds, you compare your victory point total to the threshold for the scenario, which is 45 in this case. If you get at least that many points, you win. If you don't, you lose. Some scenarios have additional lose conditions. In this one, if there are ever no stone on the wall, then we lose. But let's get into the actual steps of a turn. So first you have what's called the lookout phase. You draw the top 4 cards of your deck, and you do put aside any other cards that were already in your hand from previous rounds or the 3 cards you got from setup. You'll look at these 4 cards. We'll get into what they mean in a second. And for each of your workers you spend, you can keep 1 of the cards you've drawn. So if I spent 2 workers, I could keep 2 of these, adding them to my hand, and I discard the other 2. In competitive play, that's it for the lookout phase, but in solo, you also do the scenario event. In most scenarios, you'll randomly draw 1 token and resolve the indicated event, and then that token goes back in the pile, so you could get it again. But specifically in the Frost Giant scenario, you draw 2 tokens and resolve them both. Next, you have the action phase, which is basically the entire meat of the choices in the game, so we'll save the details of that for a moment. But in really brief basics, you can build cards from your hand with your resources. You can use actions on cards already in your empire, and you can use your 2 action tokens on this little rondel kind of circle thing here to activate different abilities. After the action phase, you do the expedition phase. If you've placed 1 or more boats on this board, which happens mainly through the sail action, which we'll get to in a moment, then you get to interact with the islands that are face up, or the top island from the right deck. If you sent your sailors with some fish for a long journey, they can go to distant islands. Otherwise, they can only go to nearby islands. And normally you'll just pillage the island, which means you discard it and immediately get the indicated resources and or victory points, stars. And again, you can pick the topmost card of the right deck. But if you sent your ship with some weapons, then you can instead conquer the card, adding it to your empire, so it becomes another card you can use, and you'll get a building bonus of resources generally. Finally, you get to the cleanup phase. Any cards in your empire you've exhausted to use their action, you refresh back to their ready side. You also get all your spent workers back into your general supply. And finally, you look at the action tiles. If there are any gold ones that don't have your tokens on them, they flip back to their cheaper side. And then any tokens with your tokens on them flip to their more expensive side. And you get your tokens back. Also, during the cleanup step, you take any islands that remain, discard them, and flip over 2 new islands for each spot. At the end of 4 rounds, you again see whether you beat the victory point threshold. You'll generally have some victory points from actions you've taken with that star icon. For every card in your empire, whether it's an island or a card you played or your starting cards, you get 1 victory point. For every 2 regular resources or 1 gold token, you get 1 victory point. And often solo scenarios will give you more victory points. So here, every stone on the wall is worth 3 victory points, and every person there is worth 2. So those are all the rules for the game, except for the ones that matter the most, how you do the action phase. So your first basic action is to build a card in your hand into your empire. And all you have to do that is spend the indicated number of resources if you're able, discarding them back to the supply. And then you just put the card in your empire, ready to go. Some cards, instead of having a build cost in the corner, instead list one of the actions from these 5 options. And how it works is when you put one of your action tokens on the indicated action type, you can play one of these cards for free. Now, if it says to play like this one, then it's an instant effect you resolve and then discard. But if it says to build, generally a field with one of these pumpkin icons, you get to put it in your empire and you immediately gain its amount of resources indicated, kind of like your starting fields at the beginning of the game. Your next option is to use an action printed on a card in your empire already. And most will require some kind of cost, so here I have to assign a worker to it. That's a special mechanic for this faction, where their workers kind of like get locked into cards. And you also have to spend 1 fish to gain 2 victory points and 1 weapon token. When you use an action, you rotate the card, exhaust it to show you can't use it again this turn unless something else unexhausts it. And your final option is to put one of your action tokens on one of these spots. Construct lets you build a card from your hand for free, so you would have to pay the 2 wood in this case. Populate lets you add another worker to your supply because they are used for a lot of effects and actions on cards. Harvest lets you pick 1 field and gain its resources. So for example, I could pick the forest and get 2 wood. Explore lets you draw the top card of your deck. And Sail puts one of your ships out with a fish or an axe, as we already talked about. You can put your action tokens on the same space. And you can actually potentially do up to 2 actions for each of them per round. If you spend an apple, you can take one of your action tokens that's already placed, flip it to its X side, and move it to an adjacent spot to take that action. But once you've done that and it's on its X side, you can't do it with that token again this round. Now in the solo game, as I already mentioned, when you leave your action pawns on a space at the end of a round, those spaces flip up and they can only flip back over if they don't have anybody on them in a future round. And that's going to make it cost extra to use the indicated action if you place your pawn there. A few other random details. Gold can be used to substitute for any other resource. Gold will come from certain action cards. And also, some field cards don't have resources themselves, but modify existing fields. So, like, this would turn into a 3 producing grassland. I would still get 1 sheep when I played this, and it still counts as a card for a victory point at the end of the game. But now whenever I harvest here, I get 3 sheep instead of 2. So a nice little upgrade. And one final little note, each card has a type, and these are generally unique between the clans besides the basic field pumpkin. And a lot of cards will interact with them. So this one's saying you can assign a worker here to gain 1 apple for each of these you have in your empire, or 1 fish for each of those. Oh, and a final note for solo, every solo board has a unique action you can use for the scenario. And it works just like any other action, but since you can't exhaust the entire solo board, I just like to mark it with some kind of random token and remove it at the end of the round. So there you go, those are the basics of how to play Empires of the North solo.
Now let's jump right into the playthrough.
But the basic idea of this scenario is we start with 1 worker and 2 stone on the wall. If we ever run out of stone here, we lose immediately. And every turn we're going to draw 2 event tokens, 1 more than normal, and most of them are going to spawn workers on the Frost Giant space, which count as giants. And if the workers here ever outnumber the number of stone here, then they get rid of one of our stone. Remember, if we lose it, that's a loss condition. They also get rid of all their giants, and they get rid of half of the guys I have here. Now, as an action as many times as I want per turn, I can spend a fish or an apple to put another worker here, and each of them is worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. And additionally, some of the events will let me put more stone here, and each of those is worth 3 victory points. And the action I have available to me once per round is I can spend 1 weapon to take away 2 frost giants. I can go attack them. We'll get to the events in a second once we finish figuring out our first cards. So this is technically part of setup, but I wanted to kind of show the thought process. I have 5 cards. I'm going to pick 3 to keep. And a big thing for this particular clan, they have the assign keyword. You also saw it on the wall. I put one of my workers here, and he stays here, generally to give me a really good benefit. But then some of my other locations will give me the ability to release a worker, which means I get them back from the location. So with that in mind, I'm definitely going to want the market, because this gives me a consistent way just for 1 sheep to get gold, a great resource, and to get one of my workers back. So that's a definite keep. Okay, then I got 2 copies of the same card, Homestead. I can assign 1 worker there to gain a victory point and 1 resource each from 2 different locations. That's going to combo great with my market because I can gain a sheep and something else and then use the sheep to immediately release the guy that's put there. So let's get both of those. I don't think I need another Homestead. So that leaves these 2 cards that are free to play, 1 with a Harvest, 1 with an Explore. Gain 1 resource from 2 different fields, again, same as that other card. And Welcome Party. Choose one of my boats on the expedition board and immediately resolve a pillage conquer of a nearby island. That's not as important in solo as competitive because I'm not racing other players. So let's get festival preparations for my 3rd card. So we'll set those aside while we go into our first lookout phase of round 1. Remember, I get 4 cards. I'm going to spend a worker for each one I want to keep. Now let's see, I don't think I need another festival preparations. I'm not going to necessarily harvest that much. I've got another market, which gives me another way to release, although that's a lot of sheep, but that's definitely a consideration. Okay, tavern construction. Each time you assign a worker, you may spend any resource to gain 1 victory point. That's decent, but that's a major resource sink. And finally, coming of age ceremony. Each time I populate, which remember is the action that gets me extra workers, I can gain a fish or an apple or a stone. I get an apple for building. It only costs a wood? Heck yes. Now looking at my locations in my hand already, I'm probably only going to use 1 worker this round, plus maybe sending 1 to the wall, so I can keep all 3 of these, getting 6 cards total. So I got 2 workers left. Should be enough, I think. All right, now we see the scenario event. Again, for this one, we're going to draw 2. First, we've got 4. Spend 1 stone or 1 wood, or assign 1 worker from the general supply to the Frost Giants. So I've got 2 wood currently, but I can get 2 more from harvesting. So yeah, let's spend it. I don't want more giants than I can handle. And I also got 1. Spend 1 stone, or remove 1 worker from the wall if possible. And I don't have a stone, so I have to take the worker removal option, which basically cost me 2 victory points. The weird thing, though, is that I didn't get any Frost Giants, which means I know I'm safe for next turn, because they can only add 2 a turn max. So I'm definitely not going to worry about spending a weapon that I can't get anyway to get rid of Frost Giants, but I might take an action to assign a worker to the wall with an apple or a fish. I've got no way to get stone right now, which makes me think coming of age ceremony would be a nice first build. I'll get an apple, and then if I populate this turn, I'll get a stone if I want it. So let's start with that. Cost my last wood. And again, I get my building bonus. Now, I do want to get some wood back so I can play my homestead and start assigning workers. The best way to do that will be to harvest, although I could populate and then move over to harvest. Well, let's definitely populate. We're going to do that. Gives us an extra worker, and we'll choose a stone as our bonus from the coming of age ceremony. And hey, who needs an apple? Let's move this over to harvest and choose the forest for 2 wood. And let's spend those immediately to build my homestead. I can assign a worker there in a moment. So I can exhaust it for an action, put a worker there. I gain 1 victory point and 1 resource from each of 2 different locations. And I still have a lot of sheep, so I'll go for 1 wood and 1 fish. Oh, I forgot festival preparations when I did the harvest, so I get to do that again. And let's again get a fish and a wood. Yeah, that's great, because I now have the 2 wood I need to get a market. And if I spend a sheep, I basically turn it into a gold. And I get to release my guy, which means he's actually available this turn, although I don't think I'll need him. I should have kept one more card. Let's see, I've got some fish, I've got some extra workers. Let's assign one of them to the wall, I think, for now. Okay, I've got another market, but I don't need it yet. And I do have a stone for a tavern, but I'm not going to assign anybody, and I don't want to spend any extra resources, so I'll just hang on to that for now. But I still have my extra action. I guess I could harvest and get 2 more wood and build another market, but again, it's not really worthwhile. I could populate again to get my bonus. Heck, I could populate, choose the apple bonus, and then use the apple to move over to harvest and get 2 more goods. That seems great. So sure, let's populate, get an apple, and let's see, do I want to harvest or construct? I guess if I get 2 wood, it's kind of the same difference because I can use the 2 wood to construct later. But this will set me up because one of the events I might draw lets me spend 2 wood and or stone to add another stone to the wall, which makes it safer and gives me 3 victory points. Okay, no boats for the expedition phase this time, but I am on the board with 1 victory point, yay. Okay, we never even got to look at the islands, but that's okay. We've got a new set. And harvest will be more expensive next time. 1 sheep if we use that, as well as all our workers. Okay, we're in round 2 of 4. Got our market and our tavern construction left from last round. Let's see what new cards we get in the lookout phase. Okay, Asmund's in. Spend 1 sheep to gain 1 victory point. Just 1 wood, that's not too bad. Another one. Friendly Giant. Assign 1 worker and spend 1 fish to gain 2 victory points and a weapon. I definitely want that so I can fight off giants if there are too many of them. And Sacred Obelisk. Spend 2 of those resources in any combination to gain 2 victory points and release 1 worker. I already have ways to release that are much more economical than that. Although, you know what? I don't really need that many workers for any of my things yet, so let's keep all 4 of them. It can't really hurt, right? Okay, first event. Last minute fortification. Oh, nice. You may spend 2 stone and or wood to place 1 stone in the wall, and then assign 1 guy to the frost giants. So I'll definitely do that with my 2 wood. It's easier to get. That gets us a stronger wall and 3 more victory points, but our first giant is here. And then 3, send the raven. You may spend 1 apple or fish to place 1 guy on the wall. I mean, I can always do that, so I'm going to get that, but they do assign another frost giant. So we are technically in danger now. If they got 2 again next turn, then they would overwhelm us. So I might want to get an axe and use it to defeat them. All right, so let's do our homestead first. We're going to put 1 guy there. That gets us our second victory point, and I get 2 resources again. I think fish and wood is still the way to go, at least for now. And let's use that wood to build our friendly giant. Then we'll assign a guy to it, spend a fish, get some victory points and a weapon. So there's our second worker, 1 of our fish. That gets us to 4 victory points and our first weapon. We could use a conquer an island, but we're going to kill some giants. So I'm using Giant's Bane. I discard this, and they're both gone. And I could mark this to show I've used it for the round, although it doesn't really matter, since clearly I'm not going to get any more killing done right now. And I guess I'll go and use my market to get 1 of my workers back, spend a sheep for a gold. And I still like my little combo from last turn. Let's get a worker, get an apple from doing so, and this time we'll spend the apple to do a construct action. Got a couple that are more expensive. Sacred Obelisk can release, so can Market. But Market basically changes a sheep into a gold, which is kind of like a half victory point gain. This one is kind of like a 1 victory point gain, but it's more resources. I'm going to build another Market. Let's actually go sailing, I think. Yeah, I don't really have the sheep. I mean, I could use a gold to count as a sheep. And actually, I might as well, because I'll get a gold back. And I will release the worker that was on the giants. So a little bit of a nothing there, but at least I got my worker back. All right, it's a bunch of cards. I'm not feeling like I need to play them yet. So going into the expedition phase. You know what, actually, I think I am going to use 1 of my 2 fish. Because getting this one, a gold, a wood, and a stone, and a victory point. The wood and the stone will set me up in case I get that number 2 event again, because right now I don't have enough resources otherwise. So I will pillage this distant island, and again get gold, wood, stone, and my 5th victory point. And that's discarded since I'm just pillaging it. The rest will be in a second with the cleanup phase. Here's some fun new cards. Harvest is back to being cheaper, but both construct and sail will be more expensive in round 3. And speaking of, we're halfway through the game, and God, I need 45 victory points. That's going to be a tall order. I still have a ton of cards left. I can get more because I have so many workers. Okay, Homestead, I definitely want another one of those. I wish I'd kept it in my initial hand. Harvest to play, I'm sure I'll get that. So one guy and a sheep to sail, and then additionally release one. That's pretty nice. And then spend one sheep to get a victory point. I mean, I don't need all of these, but there's no way I'm using that many workers, so let's go ahead and place some. By the way, my hope for round 4 is to like just send a slew of those workers to the wall and get 2 extra victory points for each one when I do. All right, let's see what events we get. 4. That's the catapult again, so I have to add a giant unless I spend a wood or a stone. And I guess that's worth doing, because if I don't get the chance to build another stone, they can add up to 2 giants per turn. So if I cancel a giant now, I am completely safe from giant attacks no matter what. All right, and we also get 5. Open the gates. You may spend 1 weapon to gain 1 victory point for each person on the frost giants. No. Oh man, we don't add a frost giant for that either? Well, darn, I just wasted my stone. Oh well. So for a big frost giant attack, these guys certainly aren't very aggressive. All right, so again, since I have no other way to get apples, it doesn't hurt me much to populate and then harvest anyway. I'll get the apple from my bonus and then spend it. I do get an 8th worker. Jeez. But for the harvesting, I'll get 2 wood so I can build the buildings I want. And I'll also play festival preparations. And I guess I get a sheep and a fish. The fish are going to let me send my guys to the wall, which is worth a lot of victory points. That gives me enough wood to get another homestead for 2. And that is beautiful, because now I can activate them both. So that's getting me 2 more victory points. And I guess I have a sheep and a fish, and then a wood and a fish to keep the fish coming. We'll use my friendly giant to assign another worker, spend a fish. And that's getting me an axe and up to 9 victory points. You know, my favorite of the cards I've got right now is Skinny's Port. I do have the wood to build it. They'll let me sail this round, even though sailing would normally cost more. Let's expand our empire view a bit. So I can spend my last worker and a sheep to sail. You know, I don't think I'll need the axe. I'm not going to try to kill any more giants. So let's go ahead and conquer with this one of the nearby islands. And also get to release somebody, so now I have a worker available. And let's spend another sheep. It gets us a gold and releases somebody else. You know what? For my second action, I think I will actually harvest. Well, again, might as well populate and then harvest. No reason not to with the apple. And I'll get 2 sheep this time now that I have multiple things to use them with. But I'll use one with a market. Gets me a gold, and my last guy released. Man, I have a lot of workers. I wish I had more fish to get them all over there. But I do have 1 stone left, but nothing else going on, really. I mean, I guess I can build the tavern just for the victory point eventually if I don't need to use that with the events. All right, so what are my 2 visible options? You can spend any 2 resources to populate. I think I've populated enough. Or I can spend 1 worker to gain a wood. I'm almost surely going to have some workers left, and that's worth a bit more victory points. A fish and a gold is better than a sheep and an apple. So sure, let's gain Shipwreck Shore to my empire. And some final island options, mainly for pillaging. Only harvesting is going to have an extra cost going into the final round. And man, I'm going to try to get as much fish as I can to send a slew of those guys over. I mean, worst case, I can use my gold, because it'll turn 1 victory point into 2, since each guy on the wall is worth 2. But we'll see how the events go. All right, final round. This game is fast. 4 cards. After party for 1 wood. Assign a worker here to unexhaust any other card in your empire. That seems like it could be worthwhile. Sacred Obelisk, we know we don't care. Northern Festival, assign 2 to gain 2, and I gain an axe for building it. 2 of those. Let's see, I'm going to be able to get at least a few wood. Let's keep, I want as many workers as possible. Let's just keep After Party. Do I keep anything? Maybe I keep nothing. I'm going to keep nothing. I want to be able to send all those guys to the wall. Speaking of the wall, let's see what happens. 3. All right, so that just puts a giant on the wall, and I can send a guy to the wall. But again, I think it's sort of weird because I can already do that. And 5. I could spend an axe, gain 1 victory point for each guy there. I have better uses for my axes, so all right. So this turn is all about shunting guys over to the wall. Anyway, none of my locations really interest me much. Although I guess it can't hurt to, like, maybe populate and then go over to construct with each of my actions. Sure, let's just try that out. We are making babies like wild. So populate, person, apple, spend apple. And what the heck, in case it works out, I'll just get spend a sheep to gain a victory point. All right, so homestead's gonna be my most important things to start. It's 2 victory points getting me up to 11. Then I'll get 2 sheep to release my guys and 2 fish to send them to the wall. And we can immediately use both our markets to get them back. Trading 2 sheep for 2 gold. And I guess Friendly Giant is still worth it. I can assign a guy and spend a fish because I get 2 victory points and a axe. And then I can use Skinny's Port. I actually have to spend a worker, so he's not going to go to the wall. But I get this one back. I do lose my sheep. And let's go ahead and conquer something for another victory point. Well, hold on. I don't know if any of that makes much sense, because I'm only really getting 1 victory point. Well, I'm not going to worry about it. Let's just try it out. I don't have any sheep left to get victory points, so I think it's just wall time. So 4 fish will get 4 of them over there. And again, it is a gain of 1 victory point, so I'll spend 6 gold to get the rest. So just have 1 gold and 1 rock left. And I actually can build the tavern with my rock. That's half a victory point into 1 victory point. Now, these 2 cards aren't happening. And yeah, neither of the options that I can conquer will give me a victory point, because I only have 1 extra resource. So let's conquer the top one. Hey, we got lucky. That'll be 1 victory point for conquering Haunted Island. Sorry, I should really say 2, because I'm getting 1 for having it in my empire, and then for the 2 resources, every 2 regular resources become 1 VP at the end. All right, so time to calculate how we did. We're only at 13, but now we get 1 for every card in our empire. So that's 5, 10, 15. Gets us up to 29. We're definitely going to be fine. 1 gold and 2 regular resources. That gets us up to 31. And now where the big money is at. We're getting 9 victory points, 3 each from our stones. That gets us up to 40. Or we need 45, but of course higher is better. And then 3, 6, 9, 11 times 2, 22. So we can flip to our 50 side, and we go all the way up to 62. We beat the threshold by 19, or no, 17. Definitely got to say the coming of age ceremony was certainly the MVP of the game. Having consistent apples was pretty huge. There you go. That is Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North. Hope you enjoyed the playthrough.
Click the link if you'd like to hear my review of the game's solo play.
Good gaming, everyone, and we'll see you at the next stop.